You're listening to the Seahawks Insiders, getting you ready for Seahawks football every Sunday. Presented by Delta, the official airline of the Seahawks. Now, here's your host, Jen Mueller.
Oh, welcome back from the bye. Although, John Boyle, I kind of extended the bye week. I am not back in our studio yet. I was just having too much fun to come back. I know, I miss being there, but we're still going to talk about football.
Oh, good.
Before we do, I got to know how your bye week was, because you decided to take really a truly massive undertaking on the bye week.
We did. We had 3 kids at Disneyland, which is both really fun and really exhausting. But the kids had a blast, which is what matters. And it is pretty special to see that through their eyes, you know. Watching a 4-year-old enjoy rides is pretty fun.
Were there any rides that got to be too much for them? Or were they up for everything?
They were pretty up for. I couldn't talk them into the big roller coaster at California Adventure, but even the 4-year-old loved Space Mountain, which surprised me. I thought that might scare her, but yeah, they were riding just about everything and having a great time.
Well, perfect. They were troopers. You had a good time. You probably need a vacation from your vacation. And maybe football is going to be the way to do that. Meanwhile, while the Seahawks were on a bye last week, JSN was still winning awards. John, it truly is incredible when you take a look, not just at this season, but what it means for Jackson Smith-Njigba in terms of just franchise records and franchise history, what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, he is having a truly special season. Just won NFC Player of the Month, which is all the more impressive considering a lot of the guys in the conference played 4 games in October, and Jackson Smith-Njigba played only 3. But in those 3, he had over 400 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. And yeah, I mean, he is off to, pretty historic start. He's right on pace with some of these great all-time, 1,900 plus yard receiving seasons. He's on track to just obliterate every Seahawks receiving record for a single season. And it's just the consistency that he's doing it with is so impressive. I mean, his quote unquote worst game, he still had 79 yards, including some big, clutch catches and a win in Arizona. So he's been outstanding, and every award he gets is well deserved.
It kind of makes you laugh thinking about the conversations we had before the season started of how are they going to use him and Cooper Kupp?
How can they coexist? I know. They're both slot guys that'll never work. Well, it's funny
it's never going to work.
The NFL Next Gen stats and stuff that breaks all that down. Like he's moved outside. He's playing outside a ton, and it's working just fine. He's a great. He's just a great all around receiver wherever you put him.
Well, and it makes me wonder what else could he do to improve for the second half of the season, because you know that while the Seahawks took some time off, they were also doing a lot of self-scouting along the way. And there are always things that you can improve on. But when you take a look at kind of those self-scouting notes, Mike McDonald said, don't look at the stats too much. There's a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, you feel like it's really not the numbers. It's watching the tape and watching, like, if you go through and watch individual efforts on each play, there's some great effort out there. And again, in all 3 phases. But you're asking about offense specifically, and you see our receivers blocking. All of our linemen are trying to finish blocks for the most part. There's times where you want more from guys, but the effort and the selflessness is there. And
that's really, most key when we talk about their run game. When we talk about all things this team has done well. They came in the season really wanting to hang the hat on the run game, and the effort's there, and the attempts are there, but just the overall production is not. But what Mike's telling us and what they saw when they studied it is like they're not super far off from where they want to be. They've seen glimpses of it. It's it's been really explosive and productive at times. It's just the consistency is not there yet. So that's I think to me for this team to go from being a really good team so far to where they can really get in that truly elite companies if they get the run game where they want it.
The interesting part of that conversation, specifically as it relates to the Commanders matchup, is the conversation with Washington is going the opposite direction. You look at the rushing yards per game that the Commanders have been able to put up, and it appears that is the strength of their offense. Just based on the numbers, it's like 137 yards a game. And yet all of the conversation coming out of the game against Kansas City has been how that run game is not living up to the standards it set at the beginning of the season. And that could all come into play, John, depending on how that personnel ends up looking on the offensive side of things on Sunday night.
For sure. I mean, Jayden Daniels, he practiced fully Wednesday. It sounds like he's probably getting back. But yeah, when you talk about, I mean, we saw it early in Russell Wilson's career. When you have a running back or a quarterback who can run like that, it really affects your whole running game. And so, if they're planning on leaning on that run game, the way they have it structured, the quarterback has to be part of that. Now, Marcus Mariota can run as well, but he's not quite the same athlete at this stage of his career that Jayden Daniels is. So I think when you look at Washington's run game and like how it can improve, probably the biggest thing for them is getting their quarterback back.
Yeah, I think it was just 60 yards against Kansas City on Monday night. Now, the Commanders are leaning, it sounds like, as you mentioned, towards Jayden Daniels returning. But even if he doesn't, Mariota is running something similar enough that the Seahawks shouldn't have to change any of their preparation this week.
The good news is they're running the same offense. They don't have to change offenses by the quarterbacks. I think both operate it really well. Both have really great arm talent. Both can extend plays. Both are really fast. Yeah, I mean it's a similar operation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, the types of plays that we're going to be practicing against and preparing for really wouldn't change based on who's playing. Now, you got to be ready for both. You got to be ready for both for every week, but normally you're just focusing on the starter, so that changes a little bit.
I feel like if you get any coach in an honest moment, if there's any question of who's available, like you're going to prepare for the starter. You have to. I mean, you can't just go, we'll prepare for the backup and then the starter plays and you're not ready. But to Mike's point, like they're not going to change drastically what they do depending on who the quarterback is. It's just maybe there's a few more talents available if Jayden Daniels is in there.
Or maybe not, though, because if he's coming back from a hamstring injury, that is in fact what sidelined him. That mobility becomes kind of a thing. And this defensive front has been really aggressive on that one. So I'm not sure that it is exactly the same. Of course, you practice for all of those things. I was listening to Cliff Kingsbury, who is the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, and his biggest thing, and John, I think this shows up when you watch their games, it's just finding more consistency across the board. They're not being able to put two halves of football together. They're not able to put the phases of football together. And I think Washington just wants to see some sort of consistency start to finish in their games.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that about a lot of teams, but yeah, I mean, they're coming off a game in which they got off to a pretty promising start and then it kind of fizzled out against a really good team. So yeah, I mean, I think just overall what we're hearing out of there and hearing from Dan Quinn, like it's been a frustrating stretch here. This is a team that came into the league or came into the season with very high expectations. They were in the conference championship game last year with a rookie quarterback. They went out and made some moves that were very win now, bringing in veteran guys like Von Miller. And it just, for a lot of reasons, injuries being a big part of it, they've not been the same team this year. And they are a team that's really looking to get back on track before the season gets away from them.
Well, yeah, because they have lost 3 straight games and their schedule does not get any easier from here. Before we take a look at this matchup a little closer, let's pause for a word from our presenting sponsor.
Seattle is a city wired for change, where innovation drives the everyday, and Delta is proud to invest in that momentum. With nonstop flights to over 60 global destinations from Seattle, Delta connects you to the world with thoughtfully designed cabins, premium service, and a seamless travel experience, all while supporting the community you call home. So your travel time feels more like me time. Delta, flying Seattle forward. Visit delta.com or download Delta's app to book your next trip.
We were talking about the injury to Jayden Daniels and how that could affect the game on Sunday. John, we already know that Terry McLaurin is out. He re-injured his quad on Monday night. And so you are looking at a banged-up unit and a healthier Seahawks defense based on the practice report early this week.
Yes, unfortunately, Julian Love did have a setback, Mike McDonald told us, so he's going to be... No, they haven't ruled him out, but the way Mike talked about it, I would think it's probably unlikely we see Julian Love this week. But yeah, I mean, hopefully Devin Witherspoon is back. He was a full participant on Wednesday. You've got Derek Hall. He was limited Wednesday, but from what Mike said, there's a good chance he's back as well. So starting to see that defense get healthier. I'm really intrigued to see what they do with Nicky Manwari and Spoon on the field at the same time. They are guys that physically don't look at all the same. They're, one's a lot bigger, but they both play very physically. They're great box defenders, nickel guys. Like, I'll be curious if, just one guy's, if they just want to leave Spoon outside and play a lot of big nickel theme and Manwari inside, or if they want to kind of switch them around. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for Mike to figure out how to use both those guys together because they're both just such special talents.
I wonder, too, how many times their minds get blown when they're trying to draw this up. And they're like, but we could put him here. We could put him here. We could do this. We could do that. And suddenly you've got 64 options. And you can only use a couple on game day. I suspect that probably happens somewhere along the line. I also loved, first of all, Nick's confidence shows up in all the right ways. If our audience has not had a chance to listen to Nick Imanwari talk to the media, it shows up certainly in the way that he talks about a game and his teammates. But he told us back in preseason that he's got older brothers that really helped get him in line and pushed him and got him to be where he is. And besides, if you don't stand up for yourself, you're not going to get anything with your older brothers. But I loved how he came out and said this week, again, it was a great choice by the Seahawks to draft him.
Yeah.
And I just chuckled at that. It's like, well, early proclamation, and you're not wrong.
Yeah, a few of us did talk to Nick Imanwari on Wednesday in the locker room, and it was interesting hearing him talk about he really likes Seattle. He felt like he was a great fit. Obviously, Mike Macdonald has shown he knows what to do with a big, versatile safety in Baltimore. And he said, he wasn't sure what was going to happen when the Seahawks took Gray's Abel. Obviously he was projected by a lot of people as a first-round pick, thought he would maybe end up in Seattle. And so once that pick made, he wasn't sure. And then he starts getting phone calls early in the second round, and he's like, oh, who's on the clock? He didn't know for a minute there that it was Seattle traded up to go get him. So he was very excited, and by all accounts, from what little sample size we have so far, it looks like just a phenomenal pick.
Yeah, and side note, Gray's Abel, pretty phenomenal
Holy
pick,
cow.
too. In fact, he has the highest run block win rate of any interior offensive lineman in the league,
as well,
which I find pretty impressive.
Really low pressure rate as a pass. I mean, Mike made a great point yesterday of probably the best thing we say is we're not talking about him.
At all.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, because he's played so clean. You just, for an interior lineman to stand out a lot of times is a bad thing. So for us to not even really be focused on him because he's just doing his job at such a high level, I mean, yeah, just an outstanding player and really kind of just setting the tone, being the type of, physical, nasty player that the Seahawks want.
Doesn't look like that when you see him in real life, but when you see him on the field, those are exactly the words that I would use to describe him. And, I think when Mike Macdonald starts talking about team identity, you gravitate towards the defensive side of the ball. I think it's showing up everywhere. And the words that Mike comes back to as he's saying these, I picture exactly what's happening on the field. I think that these are so great. Let's see if you agree.
We say our style is we're trying to be decisive, shocking, and relentless. And I think there's a lot of times we're there, but we know that's what we're striving towards. I think it's clear on my front in terms of messaging about how we're operating, but we want to be aggressive. We want to be physical, without hitting all the coaching buzzwords, but that really is who we want to be. We want to be attacking and unrelenting and play an exciting brand of ball.
I thought it was really interesting when we talked to Cooper Kupp yesterday. He was asked about identity, and he brought up the point of everybody talks about in July and August wanting to be these things, tough, relentless, all those things, but it's not that easy to do. It's one of these, okay, everyone says it, but to actually become that, and you can't be as physical as you want to be in practice that time of year. So that's a big step to go from here's who we want to be to actually being it. And I think Mike and his staff have done an incredible job of bringing this team to where they want to be. And he talked earlier this week about, finding the identity. And someone asked, were you there last year? He said, we were still looking for it at this time because that's the natural progression with a new coaching staff. So to come out of the bye at 5-2 and feeling like you really have that identity, whereas last year they were finding it as they went and then they're still able to finish strong. To me, this sets up for a great second half of the season for the Seahawks.
Well, and I would say top to bottom. Too, right? You can see it in all three phases of the game.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it with the starters. You can see it with the guys who come in for injuries or, just for depth on that one. And I think that it is really clear that this is a team that causes a lot of problems and that there could be some mismatches on the field, which is exactly what our fantasy insider Scott Engel is looking at as he helps you set your lineup.
Thanks, Jen and John, and welcome back from the bye week. Here we are, week 9 in fantasy football. A lot of maneuvering to still do as 4 teams are on a bye in NFL week 9. We start at quarterback with Sam Darnold of the Seahawks, putting up great numbers connecting with Jackson Smith-Njigba. This season, the Washington Commanders 29th in allowing fantasy points per game to opposing quarterback. And how about the job the Seahawks offensive line is doing for Sam Darnold? 9 sacks allowed. That's the least in the NFC so far this season. Also, Daniel Jones gets a very good matchup against Pittsburgh. He is a must-start this week. The Steelers allow the second most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Let's go to running backs, where Kamani Vidal of the Chargers is becoming close to a must-start. If you have a tight lineup decision between Vidal and another player, go with Vidal. Great matchup against the Tennessee Titans. And in a high-scoring game between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, Kareem Hunt can give you more touchdowns. Very playable for a second straight week. We mentioned him last week. Could be 1, maybe 2 touchdowns. The Jaguars are also coming back from a bye, and before the bye, Travis Hunter had the best game of his rookie season. Good matchup against the Raiders this week. Start him as well. And also Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings. Quite underrated for fantasy perspectives, and no team has allowed more fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks to wide receivers than the Detroit Lions. And here's a good streaming play at tight end. No team has allowed more touchdown passes to tight ends than the Cincinnati Bengals, who have allowed 10. The next closest team has allowed 6. So it's time to get rookie Colston Loveland into your lineup. For more from me, check out the Week 9 Fantasy Football Guide on Seahawks.com. Covers all teams, all positions. News tab, Fantasy Insider. Also check me out on rotoballer.com with my lineup rankings and my fantasy football lineup spotlights on Sunday morning. Back to you, Jen and John, for Week 9 Sunday Night Football for the Seahawks.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, John, so we have talked about all of these different phases of the game. You know who we have not talked about yet? And I've specifically saved the best for last. As in, one of the best to ever do it. We get a chance to see Bobby Wagner on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Seahawks are going to go out and try to beat Bobby Wagner, but man, anytime you get to see him play football, just what an incredible career he's had, and obviously he's going to go down not just as an all-time great Seahawk, but an all-time great player and linebacker. Just what he's been able to do, both production-wise, awards-wise, and then longevity-wise, it's amazing.
He is an 11-time All-Pro. He is closing in on 14 straight seasons of 100 or more tackles. He's at 85 right now, 83 right now. The only player in the NFL with more tackles than Bobby Wagner
Jordan Brooks
would be his former teammate, Jordan Brooks. Yeah. Mike McDonald had a fun story about just kind of meeting Bobby for the first time when he came into Baltimore, actually, when he was looking at signing there. But in terms of just what Bobby has done, well, Coach is certainly impressed.
Yeah, I think you're just speaking to his resume, which is probably, rivaled by maybe a couple other people in history of the game. It's probably as big of a compliment I can give him, just how, to me, it's a meticulous attention to detail, a maniacal, way to prepare for game. It takes a lot now. It's a toll on your body. It's probably the most impressive thing, honestly. I mean, his mind's obviously as sharp as ever, but to be able to still play all those plays is really impressive.
And that last part that Mike brought up is, for everything Bobby Wagner's done just production-wise, and I talked to Ernest Jones about this yesterday too, is that position is so physically demanding, and he has played 13,467 regular season snaps. He's been on the field for 96.6% of the defensive snaps in the games he's played in his career. And to do that, and he's had a couple injuries here and there, but he's been remarkably healthy throughout his career. That's hard to do for a couple seasons in the NFL at any position. To do that at middle linebacker for well over a decade, that's just pretty insane.
It is also a reminder that I need to use the word maniacal more often.
Good word.
That's a really good word.
It is.
That's a really good word. When you look at that Commanders defense in general, though, and there's some big names on defense, they are still really struggling when it comes to total yards given up during the game, which I would think bodes well for kind of what Seattle can do. Plus, they're playing on the road. And before, I would have looked at this stretch of 3 of the next 4 games on the road and think this is going to be a problem. And John, while I think it might be a problem sleeping on a plane or getting back,
my wife's not going to love it.
Concerned about that. I'm zero concerned about what these guys are going to do on the field. It is crazy the run of success that they are on the road.
No, it's really remarkable, and I know we've made this point before, but it's like you're the most geographically isolated team in the NFL. You travel every year more than any team other than maybe somebody leaving the country. And to just go out, fly across the country, make these long trips over and over again, and then play as well as they do, it's really something special. And, Mike McDonald's been the first one to point this out. This predates him. I mean, they've taken it to an even higher level under McDonald, but, this is something that, with Pete Carroll and John Schneider they got going, you got to give a lot of credit to the support staff that helps make these trips go smoothly. But, yeah, I mean, this team has really taken an attitude of, hey, we can go on the road, go cross country, and win anywhere. And it's a great thing to have in your pocket, obviously in the regular season. But then, if you're fortunate enough to get to the playoffs, you're not going to be worried about, obviously you want home field. That's great to have. But if you don't, it's not going to feel like a hindrance to your ability to win.
Right. And it's not going to be one of those storylines because it's already going to be something that works in your favor. But for it to continue to work in the Seahawks' favor, John and I have to give you the 2 things we need to see for a Seahawks win right after a word from our presenting sponsor.
Seahawks fans, 12 Status is back benefiting you this season. 1 passing yard gets you 1 mile all Seahawks season long. 12 Status members get priority boarding out of SeaTac all Seahawks season long. And 12 Status members get a 12% discount at the Seahawks Pro Shop on the 12th of each month. Sign up now at 12status.com.
Okay, John, do you want to go first this week? Shall I be kind?
I'm going to defer to you. I want to let you go, Jen. Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I am going to say. Regardless as to who is at quarterback, I want to see that pass rush continue to dial up the pressures. Maybe not as many as the 17 that we saw earlier this year, but that he is not going to be at full strength. Here's the other thing we know. The Commanders have been dealing with a makeshift offensive line. They just keep rotating guys in and out. The only steady forces, it's one of their tackles and one of their centers. So there should be some opportunity up there. I would like to see a number of pressures, probably 3 sacks, and just a complete flustered look by Jayden Daniels. On the other side of it, I suspect you are going to talk about the run game. Look, Washington is giving up a lot of yards in that defense, and if you've done some self-scouting and made those couple of tweaks, I'd like to see Seattle go over 100 yards rushing. I don't care how that goes, and I know you're probably going to tell me to get greedy, but I'll let you do that. I don't care how those carries get distributed, but I'd like about 25 carries and over 100 yards.
I am going to get greedy. I was going to talk about the run game. You're right. And I want to see 150, not just because that's going to mean they're productive on the ground, but that's probably going to mean they're winning. You're not probably going to get, if you're playing from behind, if it's a really back and forth game, you're probably not going to get all those rush attempts. So I want that to be sort of a product of a team that goes out coming out of the bye and really just gets after it. And then I'm going to stick with offense. Just get the turnovers out of the game because, man, this offense, when it stays out of its own way, has looked pretty unstoppable the last few weeks. The only time we're talking about the offense struggling is either a penalty or a turnover. And so just play clean on offense. Don't turn the ball over. Maybe get some of the – you're going to have a few penalties. That's going to happen, but don't have as many as they had last game. Right. And if they do that, I love what this offense can do. They've been so good. Obviously we talked about JSN, and if I can detour real quick back to JSN, one more point I wanted to make when we talked about what he's doing. I love that he has Cooper Kupp here with him to go through this season, not just because Cooper Kupp is like a great veteran leader, but he's one of the very few guys who knows what Jackson Smith is and Jigba is doing this season and just how hard that can be week in, week out, and teams focus on you. And he's been that, chasing a record pace type receiver. So I think that's just going to be a really valuable asset to JSN throughout the season.
Yeah, and it's something we're going to have to start tracking now that we're past the halfway point to see if he can close in on a few more of those records. Well, we have said our piece. That is how we would drop a Seahawks win. We will see how we did when we rejoin you next week for another edition of the Seahawks Insiders Podcast.